Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Before we get started today, just a quick reminder to register for the Get Off the Treadmill Summit in Irvine, California, February 14 through 16. It's coming up fast, and since we keep these very small and intimate, I don't want you to have to wait until the next one. Go to gotsummit.com, G-O-T-T with 2 T's, gotsummit.com, and sign up today. I'll see you there. Today, we're talking about a network of teams released to take action. This is the third of 12 tools of distributed decision-making in the participation age. I've really enjoyed getting into these with you in the last few podcasts. If you haven't listened to the previous podcast, it'll really help you with this one, but you can do this one as a standalone as well. This is about distributed decision-making teams. The network of teams released to take action is founded on distributed decision-making. I didn't make this stuff up. Global Human Capital Trends in 2016 did a survey of 1,000 organizations and found that 92% of the participants rated as a critical priority figuring out a new way to do business. The new organization, as they called it, is built around highly empowered teams driven by a new model of management. Then the next year, they did the same thing, and 90+% rated it as important or very important, and the statement was even more a shift away from traditional hierarchy. It said this level of interest signals a shift from designing the new organization to actively building organizational ecosystems and networks. Agility plays a central role in the organization of the future as companies race to replace structural hierarchies with networks of teams empowered to take action. And I say released to take action because you can't empower people. We'll talk about that later. Rehumanizing the workplace by giving everybody their brain back is the objective here. How do we do that? How do we give everyone their brain back? We do it through distributed decision-making, and specifically distributed decision-making teams, and specifically distributed decision-making teams and distributive leadership. What is distributed decision-making? Very simple. The more input I have in a decision, the more ownership I will take in carrying it out. Therefore, decisions should be made locally whenever possible, and it's almost always possible. So what is distributive leadership? We did a podcast on this, but we need a quick review here to show the power of distributed decision-making teams. We'll call these DDM teams going forward. Leadership. Here's my definition of leadership. Any act that improves the life, situation, or performance of another individual. Therefore, with that kind of definition, everyone is a leader. I love this statement from Jack Dorsey. He said, when I'm making decisions, I'm not leading. We shouldn't be managing. Managers make decisions. Leaders train other people to make decisions, and then they get out of the way. So that is a core principle in distributed decision-making. We want everyone to be a leader. How do DDM teams function? The key to a DDM team is that we are all mission-centered. We're not boss-centered. We're not department-centered. We are mission-centered. The mission is the boss. All of us serve at the pleasure of the mission. And if we see each other doing things that are counter to the mission, we have the right and the responsibility to help each of us get back on track and serve the mission. When we buy a copier, it should be, how does that serve our mission as a practice? When we are building a new practice in a new location, how does that serve our mission? Every one of us serves at the pleasure of the mission. That really flattens the organization when we're all in this together. That creates 3 circles of leadership: tactical leaders, strategic leaders, and people in the middle who would be strategic and tactical. Everyone is a tactical leader. They're a local leader, the guy at the front desk, the dentist in the chair. Everyone is a tactical leader. Some people are strategic leaders. They may not do much on a day-to-day basis, but they think about where the organization is going and how the practice can serve their patients better, and thinking about the big picture and the future. And then some people are crossover leaders, where they might do some tactical things and might do some strategic things. A lot of office leaders, we don't believe in office managers, but a lot of office leaders are this way as well. All right, very quickly, the difference between a managed team and a distributed decision-making team, a team released to take action. A managed team has a manager in place whose responsibility it is to make those people more productive. I can't find a single study in the history of man that supports the idea that managers make people more productive. But I sure can find a lot of data that every time you remove one, people step up and they are more productive. It is a lose-lose relationship. Management, the way we know it, is a bad idea because it puts the manager in a place where they have to be some kind of heroic activist. They have to guide, train, do reports, understand data, lead meetings, be relational, team build, have a real sense of urgency, but a real sense of patience, have a strategic mind and a tactical mind, resolve conflict, do evaluations, hire, process, fire, build processes, decide pay, corrective actions. You get the idea. It's nuts to put all of that in the shoes of one human being. You are setting them up for failure. No one should be in that position. But that's what we've done to managers. And what happens is you have someone who's really good at, say, 16 or 12 out of the 20 things, and people hate them because they're bad at the other ones. Nobody's going to be good at everything. You replace them, they're going to be good at another 12 to 16, and somebody's going to hate them for being bad at the other 4 to 8 that they aren't good at. It's a loser's proposition. It's something we've got to get away from. So here's the way to do it. Distributed decision-making teams, DDM teams. Instead of having all of those functions bottled up in one human being, we ask ourselves this interesting question. Who on the team is good at what? What are their strengths? What would be the highest and best use of everybody's strengths and everybody's talents and everybody's skills on the team? Let's take all the functions that are required for that team to be productive and let's divide it up amongst those people so that they actually feel like they have a voice, they have the ability to make decisions, and they have the understanding that they can make an impact by being self-managed. Management still exists. The difference is instead of having it exist in one person, it exists in 4 or 5 or 6 people, and they all get along together, figuring this out together because they're all doing something that they're really good at. We had one practice where we brought this idea up, and they lit up immediately because they were about to fire their practice manager. Happens all the time. Practice manager was good at like 6 out of 8 things that were really important to them. They were terrible at the other 2. Couldn't get them to that place where they were good at those 2 things. And when they were working on those 2 things, they got worse at the other 6. Dawned on them immediately, why don't we ask them if they could give away 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 of the 8 things and see who would step up and take those things. They gingerly went to the practice manager and said, hey, we know you're not good at these 2 things. Would you be willing to give those to one of the team members who might be actually better at those things? The manager jumped at it and said, this is so relieving to me. And they turned her into an office leader. And she actually ended up with 3 out of the 8 things. And somebody else had 2 out of the 8 things. And somebody else had 1 out of the 8 things. And they all ended up with things that were on their plate that made them better at what they should be doing. That is a distributed decision-making team where everyone takes over the functions that a manager used to do based on what they're good at. Somebody's really good at data and reports. They do that stuff. Somebody else is really good at guidance and training and mentoring. They do that stuff. Somebody else is really good at hiring and firing. They had the charge on that stuff. We all figure out together what needs to get done, and we serve the mission in doing that. And then the manager, who is no longer a manager now, they became a floating stakeholder leader, where they float in and out of teams, helping those teams, and sometimes they contribute. Sometimes they have a permanent responsibility on one of those teams, but in many cases, they're simply there to support and to bring resources to the table. Bill Gore in 1967 defined what he called the lattice organization. It's a beautiful, simple understanding of DDM teams and the idea of a network of teams released to take action. This is not a new idea. Again, everything we're doing here bucks against the top-down hierarchy that came from slavery, directly from slavery, through serfdom, into the military, and into the industrial age factory, and we just inherited it. Here's a better way to do business, the lattice organization. Bill Gore did this in 1967. Simple illustration. If you haven't seen my YouTube version of the podcast, it's on there. But it's a simple illustration of basically a bunch of circles connected by lines. And the circles can be teams. It can be 10 different teams, or it can be 10 different people on one team. And there's a line from every circle to every other circle in the illustration. What this simply means is that everyone interacts directly with everyone else. There is no intermediary. There is no manager. I know that sounds radical, but I can tell you it works so much better. And here's an organization with 10,000 people, $3 billion organization that has been doing this for almost 65 years. Not a single manager in the place can tell anybody else what to do. They're all self-managed teams. And it's teams of people who step up and manage themselves and create all the metrics and all the processes and all that stuff. And it works better. And it has for 65 years. I could give you 100+ examples of very large organizations that run this way and thousands of smaller ones. Tesla is trying to figure this out. Elon Musk, he wrote this email about 2 years ago. It said, hierarchy is incredibly dumb. What he mandated was that everyone now talk to everyone else to get the right thing done. In fact, he mandated that if any manager required that anybody go through them to get the right thing done, that manager would be looking for a job somewhere else. This is not a new idea, but it's an idea that's spreading very quickly. We've got to figure out how to create teams of people empowered to take action. That's how we're going to get everybody to be an adult and 100% engaged at work. So the Lattice network, the organizational model is everyone interacts directly with everyone. The mission can be the boss. All the leaders protect and promote the boss. Everyone is a leader, and they all protect and promote the boss. They don't promote their department. They don't promote their functions. They're not fighting back office with front office and accounting with marketing. We're all here just to serve the boss, and we all have one boss, and we all have one opportunity to do that. We might have different functions to do it, but that's how we do it. So if A wants to talk to L in a networked organization, or if Team A wants to talk to Team L, what happens? Well, in a networked organization, it looks pretty much like this. It's just A talks to L, or Team A talks to Team L, and there's nobody in the middle. But in a managed organization, there are somewhere between 10 and 38 touches before A can ever talk to L. It goes through A's manager's inbox, through their outbox, some director's inbox and outbox, to a vice president inbox, outbox. Then it goes back down the hierarchy. Then it goes across to the other manager's inbox and outbox, goes up his hierarchy and down his or her hierarchy. And by the time it ever gets to L, if it ever does, the story has completely changed, or it's irrelevant. Can you see why people are so frustrated with the way work works? Even if you go to your practice manager and you say something, they might say, well, that's a really good idea, but frankly, I can't share that because that makes me look bad, because I'm supposed to be the person who makes everybody else think productively and be productive. So I'm going to stifle that. Or I've got higher priorities, so that's going to sit in my inbox. And A never gets to talk to L and get the right thing done. It's bizarre. In a latticed organization, in a networked organization, 2 touches. A talks to L. Albert talks to Louise, and they get the right thing done. And then they communicate with others how that got done. They don't live in a vacuum. This isn't chaos and anarchy. I can't say everything at once, but I can guarantee you this is more organized with more communication and better communication than anything else. Go back and listen to the 2-step decision-making process, and that will alleviate any concerns you have, because distributed decision-making teams are built on the 2-step decision-making model. DDM team members are what we would call stakeholders. A stakeholder is anyone interested in the success of your practice. Your patient should be stakeholders. Your accountant should be a stakeholder. The guy who has the lease for your building should be a stakeholder. Everybody should be a stakeholder. But in this case, we're going to talk about stakeholders internally, and it's an individual to individual kind of thing. It's also a team-to-team kind of thing. We go to each other, but we don't have to go through an inbox and an outbox and a bunch of politics in order to get the right thing done. We all agree together with the office leader what needs to be done, and we all agree together what the right results should be and what the processes are, and then we figure out how to make that happen without interference. Here's a testimonial from a doctor in Washington that took on a DDM team model. We've had so many awesome new things happen. It took a few months. However, this past week, we received an email that wasn't asking permission, just an FYI email from our practice leader on what the leadership team had decided. They have a leadership team. They're a big practice with about 30 people in one location. They are starting an understand the whole picture training for our team. They believe it is the key to unlocking the product we want. I'm thrilled. David and I are seeing the miracles of having a team of owners. Thanks. That's what distributed decision-making does, is it creates a team of owners. When you have a managed team, it has one owner and a bunch of people who are being told what they're supposed to do, and there's no engagement. I love this image of a soccer team. When you want to think about what does a DDM team look like, you can use soccer, hockey, field hockey. There's a number of games that this works really well with. The question is, who's in charge on a soccer field? And the answer is whoever has the ball. If the ball is in between 2 people, whoever gets to the ball first is the leader. That's a distributed decision-making team model. When someone sees that the copier is on its last legs, if they recognize that, they are the leader. They've seen the ball, they've grabbed the ball, and now they have to ask themselves, what should I do with this? Who do I get with to make sure we get this fixed? 2-step decision-making plays in here very quickly. Number 1, decisions are made where they are carried out. And the question they would ask there in that model is, who would carry out the process of making copies? I need to get them involved. Step number 2 is, once those people get involved, they ask, who will be affected by us buying a copier? Accounting, the practice owner, the people who receive copies, technology. There's a lot of people who will be impacted. You never make a decision until you get input from everyone involved. David Marquette calls this intentional leadership. Intentional leadership basically says, I intend to do this. Do you see any problems with it? We don't make decisions before we ask. Who will carry this out and who will be affected? The 2 steps of distributed decision-making. Everybody should memorize those. The results of these DDM teams, we rehumanize the workplace by giving everybody their brain back. That creates autonomy, mastery, purpose, community, a lot of other great stuff. Decisions are made where they are carried out. This creates adulthood. We talked at the front of this podcast about rehumanizing the workplace by giving everybody their brain back. The number one way you give people their brain back is you allow and you require that they make decisions. That is a human thing. It's the beginning of the creative process, and we are above all creative people. That's what makes us people more than anything, is we create, we solve and decide, and we create. Decisions allow us to be adults. Children don't get to make decisions. Adults make decisions. Do they make them in a vacuum? If they do, they're not being very smart. So we put principles in place like 2-step decision making to make sure that we all make decisions as part of teams, not in a vacuum. Distributed decision making also creates community at work. We've talked about this before, but when teams organize around task, the task gets done nicely. But when teams organize around community, they organize around relationships and building relationships, the task actually gets done much better, and it's a much more rewarding environment. Netflix calls it a network of stunning colleagues. People come to work because they just love being there with everyone else around them. Incentives tied to results is another one of the benefits of DDM teams. You can tie incentives to team results. There's a lot of research around this. Incentives tied to results, not time. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Retention goes way up. People want to stay. Wegmans groceries have DDM teams. In an industry where 38% turnover is the norm, Wegmans hovers around 2 to 3% a year. 1/10 of the turnover. They have bag boys and checkout clerks that have been there for a decade or more. That is an amazing accomplishment, and it has a huge impact on not just profitability, but also customer service. DDM teams also result in faster growth and higher profits and 100% engagement. I want to go back for a second on incentives tied to results. When you give someone a salary, it has zero impact on their engagement. None. Duck's egg. Zero. When you give someone an incentive tied to a result, not bonuses. Bonuses are tied to, I sat in the chair for another year. I'm talking about if you do X amount of this, you will get your base plus that. When you give people an incentive tied to results, it has a 19% impact on their engagement. Their engagement will go up almost 20%. When you give a team, an entire team, an incentive tied to result, individual engagement on that team goes up by as much as 39% per person. Exponential. We are made to live in community, and when you teach people to live in community, their individual impact goes up exponentially. Engagement is tied to results in a DDM team. Higher engagement is critical for your success. Engaged employees are 38% more likely to have above average productivity, and 41% of employees are bored with their work, so we need to get them engaged. Engaged employees are 3 times more creative than their disengaged colleagues, and 80% of people at work are disengaged in some way, shape, or another. They don't have a passion for their work. Here's an amazing statistic. Replacing an employee costs somewhere between 150 and 800% of someone's salary. There's all kinds of reasons to create better engagement, and the best way to do that is to allow decisions and require decisions to be made locally and to have it done as teams, not as individuals who are creating chaos and anarchy. So that's DDM teams. It's a great opportunity for you to build a practice around the right way to do business. I can't think of a profession or an industry that is better suited for DDM teams than dentistry. It's been amazing and wonderful to watch practices adopt the idea that everybody could have a brain. And they rehumanize their workplace by giving everybody their brain back. If today's topic got your juices flowing, remember to register for the life-changing Get Off the Treadmill Summit in Irvine, California, February 14 to 16. Go to gotsummit.com, G-O-T-T with 2 T's, gotsummit.com, and sign up today. I'll see you there. If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone. Or connect with us at www.gottsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.